Welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to do a deep dive into a book that really got me thinking differently about how I live my life, day to day.
Okay,
The
yeah.
Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Have you read this one?
Yeah. It's funny, I actually listened to the audiobook.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if that counts, but I absorbed the information. It was
Yeah.
great, yeah.
So, the core concept is basically this, right? Our lives are really run by habits, these tiny actions that we just do automatically.
Right, yeah, without even thinking.
But the exciting part is that we can change them.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's the empowering part of it, right? It's not just, oh, you are your habits. It's you can be the architect of your habit.
Totally. That gives you a sense of control, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And we're going to be diving into some really specific examples today, including one that Duhigg talks about supermarkets
Mm-hmm.
and how they use habits to influence what we buy. Have you ever noticed this?
Oh, absolutely. Like, come on, who hasn't, right? It's so clear. Like, when you think about it, you're like, oh, they've totally got my number.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. Duhigg, he talks about this thing called the habit loop.
Right.
And this is kind of like, I think this is the foundational concept of the whole book, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's sort of the underlying mechanism of all habits. It's like the code, right? You break the code, and then you can figure out how to manipulate or change the system.
Yeah. So what are the pieces of that code?
Okay. So every habit, whether it's something good like going for a run every morning or something not so good like biting your nails, follows the same three-step loop.
Okay.
So first, there's the cue.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a trigger. It can be anything. It could be a feeling. It could be a time of day. It could be a specific location or even like a sequence of thoughts.
Okay.
And then there's the routine. And this is the actual behavior itself, the habit that you're doing.
Okay.
And finally, the reward.
The reward. Okay.
And that's a feeling of satisfaction or pleasure or relief. It could be a physical sensation too, even. But it's basically something that reinforces the entire loop and makes you want to do it again.
So basically, like every time you encounter that cue, you're like your brain is saying, okay, do the routine, get the reward, do the routine, get the reward.
Exactly. Like it's like a little like feedback loop in your brain. It's like, it gets wired.
Totally. So he gives this example in the book about stress eating. I thought this was really
Oh,
helpful.
yeah. Classic example.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think we can all relate to this.
Totally.
Um, so, let's say you're feeling stressed, right?
Hmm.
That feeling of stress becomes your cue,
Right.
and your routine is to eat a bag of chips or something.
Right. Yeah.
And the reward is that temporary feeling of like comfort or distraction
Yeah.
that you get from like munching on something.
Yeah. That little hit of dopamine,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So, but here's the key, right? Even if you know this habit, you're like, I don't like that I do this. I wish I didn't do this. You can actually change it by keeping the cue and reward the same,
Yeah. That's the brilliant part.
but just swapping out the routine.
Exactly. So you're still stressed. You still want that relief. But maybe instead of reaching for the bag of chips, you go for a walk.
Yeah,
Or you listen to music, or you call a friend. Something that's actually going to be beneficial for you in the long run.
totally. Like it's not depriving yourself of the reward. You're just like finding a healthier way to get to it.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, it's not easy, right? It takes effort, but it's possible because you're working with the existing wiring, so to speak.
Totally.
Yeah. And I think one of the most important things that Duhigg emphasizes is just the awareness piece.
Right.
Like just being able to identify your habit loops, like what are your cues, what are your routines, what are your rewards, like just that act of paying attention can make a huge difference.
It's like shining a light on it.
Right, exactly. It's like bringing it from the subconscious to the conscious, right?
Yeah.
And then you have a choice.
Yeah, the power to change it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he also talks about this idea of keystone habits, which I thought was really interesting.
Oh, yeah, this is fascinating, right?
So can you explain what those are?
So keystone habits are kind of like, they're like the VIPs of the habit world.
Okay.
They're not just any habit. They have this ripple effect on other areas of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So one example that Duhigg talks about is exercise.
Okay.
So, when people start exercising regularly, they often find that they start making healthier food choices.
Yeah.
They're more productive at work. They might even sleep better.
Interesting.
It's like this one positive habit kind of unlocks all these other positive changes.
Like a chain reaction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it makes sense, right? Because
Yeah.
when you start feeling better physically, you're more likely to want to take care of yourself in other areas of your life too.
Sure.
And it's not just exercise. The book also talks about how making your bed every morning, something so simple, can actually lead to increased productivity and a sense of discipline throughout the day.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
And also, something as simple as journaling regularly
Hmm.
that can boost your focus and your self-awareness.
Wow. Like those all seem like such small things, but they can have such a huge impact.
Right, yeah. And I think that's what's so exciting about keystone habits. It's like you don't have to overhaul your entire life to see positive change.
Right.
Just focus on one or two of these key
Yeah.
habits.
Like what could your keystone habit be? What's one small change that you could make that could really have a ripple effect?
Yeah, that's a great question for everyone listening to think about.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the kind of darker side of habit,
Right.
because Duhigg also talks about how companies are using these habit loops essentially to
Yeah.
hack our brains.
Oh, yeah, this is where it gets a little scary. Like you realize that, they're really playing us sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like to get us to buy more stuff or to behave in certain ways.
Exactly. It's like they're tapping into our primal instincts.
Totally, yeah. So give me an example. What are some of the ways that companies are doing this?
Okay, well, think about supermarkets.
Okay.
I mean, the whole layout is designed to trigger habitual purchases.
Uh-huh.
Like, think about the candy bars at the checkout.
Yeah.
It's not an accident that they're there.
Right.
They're playing on our impulse buying habits,
Mm.
that craving for a little reward at the end of a shopping trip.
Totally. And you're tired.
Yeah, you're tired, you're hungry, you're like, oh, I deserve this.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And it's not just supermarkets.
Right.
Duhigg talks about how, companies like Starbucks train their employees to respond to angry customers using very specific habit loops.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, by creating these like consistent, almost ritualistic responses, they aim to create a more positive customer experience and ultimately, of course, to keep customers coming back.
Right. Yeah.
But, it's like once you understand how these habit loops work, you can start to see them everywhere.
Yeah. You do?
Yeah. In advertising and marketing and the news and social media, like we're constantly being bombarded with cues that are designed to trigger certain routines and ultimately to get us to buy into something.
Yeah, it's a little overwhelming when you think about it.
It is.
But I think that's like what's so empowering about like reading this book and like really understanding how it all works is that you can become a more conscious consumer.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
can make choices that actually align with your goals.
Right. You can break free from that feeling of being controlled. Right.
Totally. Yeah. So, I mean, the big takeaway here is like we can actually change our habits.
Yeah. And in doing so, we can change our lives.
Totally. Like our habits really do define our future.
Right? It's not just hyperbole. Like
Yeah.
they literally shape the way that we live our lives, the choices that we make, the people that we become.
So, as we kind of wrap up here, like what's one specific habit that you want to change?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Think about it.
Yeah. I think, like, I've been trying to work on my phone use. Like, I'm so bad about just like mindlessly scrolling.
Totally. Like, what's the cue for that?
Yeah.
What's the reward? Like, what's your habit loop?
Yeah, I think for me, like, often the cue is boredom or maybe like feeling a little bit lonely or disconnected.
Mhm.
Like, I want that little hit of connection.
Right.
And then the routine is like, pick up my phone, scroll through Instagram.
Yeah.
And the reward is, like that little distraction, that little hit of dopamine. But, ultimately it's not really fulfilling.
And not leaving you feeling like, satisfied.
Right.
And so I guess, like, what are some things that you could do to, like, interrupt that loop?
Yeah, I think like for me, it's about finding other things to do that are actually going to give me that feeling of connection or stimulation. Like
Right.
maybe calling a friend or, reading a book or going for a walk.
Yeah.
Anything that's actually going to be like nourishing.
Totally. Yeah. It's about, like, being intentional about what you're doing,
Right.
not
Exactly.
just letting the habit, like,
Yeah.
run you.
Yeah.
So what about you? Like, if you had to pick one habit to change,
Mm.
what would it be?
Hmm. Well, I've been trying to be better about actually making my bed every morning.
Oh, okay.
Because Duhigg talks about that, and I'm like, okay, I can try it.
Yeah.
But I haven't been super successful yet.
And what's stopping you?
Well, I think sometimes I'm just like rushing out the
It's
door.
like you're busy.
Yeah, I'm like, oof, I don't have time.
Yeah, okay.
But I mean, maybe if I actually thought about like the reward.
Yeah.
Like the feeling of coming home to a neat and tidy room
Yeah.
and, starting the day off with that sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
Maybe that would be enough to actually get me to do it.
Yeah.
So I think I need to try that.
Yeah, I think so. Like really focus on that reward and how good it's going to feel.
Right.
So, listeners, I hope you found this as helpful as I did.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
really got me thinking about my own habits and how I can start making some changes.
Yeah, and remember, it's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about progress and awareness and just making those small steps towards a better you.
Totally. So we'd love to hear from you. What's one habit that you're going to try to change?
Yeah, let us know.
Share your thoughts in the comments below or connect with us on social media. And until next time, keep diving deep
Keep learning.
and keep growing.
Bye.